Բարեկամներ, ես վերադարձա, տաղավարում հյուրընկալներ են Johnni Achi անունով անձնավորությունը, որը արաբ-ամերիկացի խմբից, ինչ որ արաբ-ամերիկացիներ Սուրիայի համար իմ հյուրս է. Tonight I have Johnni Achi, who is Arab Americans for Syria, a group called the Arab Americans for Syria. And we want to talk about Syria. You know, this is now the center of a major fight, and it was said by Bashar Assad a long time ago, this war is not going to be contained in Syria, and little by little will spread all over Middle East, which we see that what's going on, and Turkey even now is having problem with this issue also. So, welcome to this program.
Thank you for having me on the show.
You have been on this program before, and at that time, this was approximately a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, the problem was very different than now. This is now, as it was predicted, it's went from Syria to Iraq and you know, neighboring countries. So, before you answer, I want to translate and then we'll get back. Ուրեմն ես իրեն հարցազրույց էի արել սիրիացի ինչ որ արաբ ամերիկացիներ Սուրիայի համար մի տարի ու կես 2 տարի առաջ խոսեն էինք Սիրիայի դժվարությունների մասին։ Բաշար Ասադը նախատեսել էր, որ այս չի մնալու, այսպես չի սահմանափակվելու Սուրիայում այս պատերազմը եւ տարածվելու է շրջապատի երկրների մեջ, ինչ որ տեսնում ենք Լիբանանում հիմա դժվարություն կա, Իրաքում կա, Թուրքիայում եւ Հորդանանում, ահա այսպես ընդհանուր արևելքը մխրճված այս պատերազմի կամ պատերազմների մեջ. Okay, just how we got here.
Okay, let me start from where you start. It was very different from a year and a half ago. It might have seemed that way to the outside world. It hasn't changed one bit from day one for Syria. I came on your show about a year and a half ago, and I talked, and I've been talking for 3 years about this so-called revolution or Arab Springs. It's not meant to bring democracy to the region. It's not meant to bring positive change to the region, but it was meant to bring a Khilafah Islamiyya or Islamic Caliphate. At that time, people, you would laugh at me when we talk about this. And the reason we say that, because the people who are on the ground fighting the government and the army were not the educated, were not the secular people. They were coming from the mosques on Friday, after Friday prayers. It's always only on Friday. After Friday prayers, they come out of the mosques in rural areas, not in big cities, not in Aleppo, not in Damascus, not in the major city. In rural areas, they come from the mosques, screaming Allahu Akbar, and trying to incite, you know, hate and violence. I'm not saying that there was no peaceful civilian movement. There was, and we were part of it. We wanted a change, not necessarily change meaning chaos. We want positive change. Maybe that will help Bashar Assad a little bit speed up the process of reconciliation.
You were looking for, the people were looking in the beginning for democracy.
We had democracy, with all due respect. Syria, out of all the world, out of all the countries in the Middle East, it had some sort of democracy. We have a parliament since 1940. Since the minute the French left Syria, we had a parliamentary election. Yes, we needed more political freedom, meaning more parties rule. But as far as the freedom, as we understand it, the freedom is to be able to do whatever you want. Syria had plenty of that. If you want to go change or ask for freedom, go to Saudi Arabia, go to Qatar, go to these military bases where the Americans are sitting, and people cannot even drive. Women cannot drive in Saudi Arabia. Syria was living its best days in 2010. I was there in 2010. You can ask any Syrian or any foreigner who visited Syria, one of the model city or model countries in the Middle East. We have a secular government, a doctor, educated, you know, has promised reform and was going through reform, maybe at a slow pace. We needed more political freedom, you said, multi-party systems, but that's not everybody's wish. Average person wanted to live in peace, and that we had.
And security. And
security, that was the main point. When I came on the show a year and a half ago, and I said, these people are not looking for democracy. They're looking for autocracy, theocracy. Theocracy is a democracy, the opposite of democracy. To have a religious autocracy is the opposite, absolute opposite. When you have Sharia ruling, you can't have democracy. And you can't put God in our face and have us tell us this is what God wants. You leave God at home. We all believe. problem with Syria is that we have a secular government. Christian, Muslim. I didn't know the foreign minister or the defense minister was Christian until after he was assassinated. This is how we lived in Syria. We don't know who's who. Everybody is, positioned not because of sectarian. Nobody knew who's Muslim, who's Christian, who's Alawite, Shiite. We didn't know that we had Shiite in Syria. Basically, we felt there is a group, which are the Muslim Brotherhoods, are rising up again, backed by the West for a regime change. The idea of everything that happened in the Arab Spring is regime change, trying to bring the Islamists into power. Ask me why the United States wants to put hands with the Islamists, because the rules of Bashar al-Assad did not suit him well. The man refused to kneel to the United States, refused to kneel to the imperialists, decided that the pipelines of Qatar that wanted to put the gas, that's in 2009. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United States trying to befriend Bashar al-Assad. Turkey became friend with Bashar al-Assad just in 2009.
Okay.
To try and get that pipeline gas from Qatar to Turkey. The only way you can get to Europe is through Syria. It's the gate to Europe. That's why Syria is so important, because it's maybe a fuel, transit area. You cannot pass any Gulf gas but through Syria. When Syria refused and decided to go with Iran and Russia, okay, and a multi-billion-dollar contract, Syria showed sovereignty. We are a sovereign nation. We choose whatever best for us. Our historical allies are Iran and Russia and China, and the BRICS country are never been the United States. Not that we have any animosity against the United States, but the United States decided to go with Israel against the Palestinians. Syria took the side of the Palestinians against, Yeah. So historically, Syria supported the Palestinian resistance. Syria did not want to have peace with Israel until the last Palestinian decided to have peace with Israel, until the Palestinian right of returns to their homeland happened. And that's why Syria had been targeted from way before they even entered Iraq. Now, Muslim Brotherhood have animosity with Syria. We've had terrorist attacks back in 1978, 79. I was part of that, time. And they started rising. And we know, as Syrians, we know what they will bring. We know what the alternative is going to be. It's not going to be more democratic. We stood by our president because he had promised reform, and he was doing reforms, and Syria was doing well. Now, what happened is 2 years of lies in the media. They didn't tell the whole truth. They absolutely reversed the facts. When millions were going in support of the government, they were showing you the hundreds that were going against the government. When they were telling you it was peaceful the first 6 months, we know that in the first few weeks, and this is a fact, and everybody who lives in Syria knows this fact, the first few weeks of this uprising, whatever you want to call it, movement, more security forces, more policemen, more government employees, more pilots, more assassination of government employees and army men were killed than civilians were the first few weeks. So it was not a civilian protest or peaceful protest going up and the army is shooting at them. That's not the case. So this is why we're here to say that.
So let's talk about the ISIL.
Yes.
They call some, President Obama calls it ISIL.
Yes.
Yes.
Islamic State of Iraq and Levant, or Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. It's the same. Levant is Greater Syria. How do we get
Levant
to ISIS?
is Syria and Iraq, part of Syria and Iraq. Right?
Yes, and Jordan, Palestine,
Yeah.
Lebanon, that's all was part of Syria before Sykes-Picot. Basically, in Syria, all the groups who are fighting against the government changed names all the times.
Mm-hmm.
They were called Free Syrian Army. From the Free Syrian Army, we started with Nusra Front, or Jabhat al-Nusra. And the United States started putting names to them. Those are moderate, those are more less moderate, more severe, more extreme. All along, the same people have committed atrocities against Syrian civilians. We're talking about not 3 Westerners. Recently, just 3 Westerners were beheaded by SIS, and that's why the whole world started, wanting to be part of this. Thousands of Syrians, and the videos are there, you can Google, thousands of Syrians have been beheaded on the hand of the Islamist extremists. Call them Nusra Front, call them Free Syrian Army, call them ISIS. The rise of ISIS happened in the recent few months when it moved from Islamic State of Iraq to Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. So they had been since 2010 in Iraq. Just before the Americans left Iraq, they released Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who became the Khalifat of ISIS, and he committed on his first day as the head of ISIL, at the time ISL only, ISI, Islamic State of Iraq. He committed 45 bombings in one day in Iraq, took the life of 400 civilians, most of them Shiites. They hit the mosques, they hit souks, and they hit markets. the voice was raised then that something is becoming sectarian, had a sectarian tone. Of course, the United States wants to leave, so it's either us or this chaos. Baghdadi took part in the movement in eastern Syria, where the ISIS moved, and in Raqqa mainly, and Deir ez-Zor, those two areas, mostly Sunni Muslims, so there was not a lot of resistance. There was an environment that would accepting these caliphate.
They wanted to get rid of Shia government also, so
in Iraq, and they succeeded.
Yeah.
And they succeeded. They put pressure on the United States government to pressure Noor al-Maliki,
and of course, Noor al-Maliki did lots of, you know, the wrong policies
Absolutely.
he had, like removed all the Sunnis from the positions, or wanted to court-martial them, or give, you know, the court to put them in jail or other stuff, thinking that Shias now they have to run the country, and
besides, I think
Mother Sunnis also,
yeah,
they accepted this extremist,
yes,
because
I mean,
they think
yes,
this will be better. But
yeah, to what the Americans did, took Saddam out, a Sunni, you know, who helped Sunnis and persecuted Shiites and Kurds, brought a Shiite government that's going to persecute the Sunni, and that doesn't work. We need a true democracy. You know, that's not the way to do it. But you're right, he did make a mistake. But I think his biggest mistake was not to allow American bases on Iraq before they left. And that was his biggest mistake. In 2010, they voted down leaving permanent bases in Iraq. So America in 2011 had to leave. And how convenient that the Arab Spring started in 2011, just as America is leaving Iraq. ISIS, like I said, they moved in the eastern part of Syria, and they committed crime, but the crimes, again, were done. I'm telling you, there's hundreds of beheading, of man-shit, I mean, crimes, kids, 14-year-old, killing a Syrian army officer, and men are watching and beheading. Beheading of priests in Raqqa. 3 priests were beheaded with hundreds watching. These videos were out. We were crying, screaming, stop these massacres against the Syrian people by these mercenaries who are West-backed, backed by the United States and the West, calling them moderate rebels. We've been talking about this. We've been talking about Turkey's involvement. But again, ISIS have moved. They killed 3 people, 3 Westerners. The whole world came on their power. Now they felt that when they moved into Tikrit, Erbil, that's a part where the United States have interest now.
Right.
Now they got close to the oil fields in Iraq, and was not allowed, and that's when they were bombed. Not when they massacred the Christians in Mosul. Thousands of Christians were massacred and ran away. Hundreds of thousands ran away. Yazidis and part of Sinjar. Sinjar was way before. Now everybody's talking about Ain al-Arab or Kobani, but it was Sinjar before it. And they massacred thousands. Nobody moved. Nobody cared as long. But when she got to northern Iraq, to the oil field, you have 10 reasons at least for the United States to attack you back. And one of those 10 reasons are Exxon, Chevron. I can name you 10 oil companies. Those were the 10 reasons.
Okay. Okay, I want to ask you, what is your opinion about the role of Turkey in all these matters?
Okay. Turkey from day one, before even it started, and our first rally here or protest, we was in front of the Turkish embassy. And even the Turkish people came from upstairs. They said, why are you protesting against us? We're helping you. I said, no, you're not helping. You are aiding and the rebels, you're sending weapons into Syria. They were shocked, literally, and that was an honest feature on their faces. We've done at least 10 protests in front of the Turkish embassy because we believe that the #1 enemy to Syria today is this coalition. The coalition made up from Qatar, Saudi Arabia, mainly Turkey. Turkey, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. Those 3 are the ones who incited the war in Syria. Who are the ones who, #1, they called for jihad by the Saudi Arabians. All the scholars, the clergy scholars, the Wahhabists, have been calling for jihad against the Syrian government. That alone had made thousands, tens of thousands of foreigners to flood into Syria. Qatar have supplied money, non-stop. Qatar, of course, supporting
and
the
tons
Muslim
of weapons.
Weapons and money, heavy money. They paid for tens of thousands of pounds of heavy artillery to come from Yugoslavia, from Zagreb airport specifically. These are Washington Post documentation. I'm not saying anything, by the way, today that is my opinion. Everything is from Time, from Washington Post, from the Independence. I'm talking about British and American prominent reader. Tens of thousands of weapons came on dozens airplanes with the help of the CIA, came through Turkey, entered Syria from the north. Turkey allowed tens of thousands of fighters, tens of thousands of weapons for the Syrian rebels to fight. Those rebels, we consider them terrorists. When you're allowing a part of your country to be helped by an outside enemy, these people are traitors. These are not freedom fighters like the United States insisted to call them. These people were killing Syrian civilians. It doesn't matter. They're killing them because we're pro-Bashar Assad. If I'm in a democracy, I have the right to be in support of whomever I want. So my blood was you know, my life was threatened because I support Bashar Assad. Thousands of Syrians lost their lives because they supported Bashar Assad and did not support the Muslim Brotherhood. Turkey did aid, did send money, did allow jihadists, and especially in Kasab when they attacked the Armenians. Again, this is very important. The churches in Raqqa were burnt. The churches in Aleppo were burnt. The Armenians in Aleppo were driven out. The Armenians finally in Kasab. Kasab was not to fallen if Turkey did not allow hundreds of fighters to come in from a different direction, from a main entrance. That's where they attacked the Syrian army, and they took us by, you know, by
okay. We have a video clip.
Yes,
you want us to
the video clip, I can talk about it a little bit.
Yeah,
yes.
we'll show this and then come back and we can do the conclusion of this program.
Okay, the video clips, just to explain to them, it was in the beginning of the crisis. Very important to understand that this was happened in April 2011 when they were saying it was all peaceful protest. That's when the presidential decree by Bashar Assad said no policeman will carry guns. So you're going to see unarmed policemen being shot at from the protesters, not the other way around.
Please.
Yes, this is just a brief example. I could have showed you much, much worse videos, but this is just to say that in the very first month when the Syrian soldier or policemen, they were unarmed and they were there to protect this peaceful protest, there was snipers that were attacking both civilians and policemen. We lost a lot of policemen on that day, 20 policemen in Homs alone. On the time when the United States was telling us they were all peaceful protests. We've lost a lot of army. I want to talk about, very important, if we have 2 minutes, just about the United States government and some of the congressmen insisting to arm the Syrian rebels, what they call moderate rebels. I beg you to contact your congressmen and senators and tell them not to arm anyone in Syria. If we want to bring peace to the Middle East or peace to Syria, you cannot send more weapons. Weapons are mass destructive. There is no moderate weapon. All weapons are lethal. There is no non-lethal weapons. They're all used to kill more Syrians. There is no moderate rebels in Syria, please. When Adam Schiff or the likes of Adam Schiff comes on the show and talks about arming the moderate rebels, Mr. McCain, he was videoed with northern Syria, with the leaders of ISIS today, who were the leaders of the Nusra Front at one time, were the leaders of the Free Syrian Army at another time. They're all Islamist. All the Free Syrian Army names of the brigades are all Islamist names. Abu Saqqar, the one who took the heart of the Syrian soldier and ate it, and we've seen that in Western media, he's from the Free Syrian Army. He was supposed to be from the moderate rebels. The people who are in Damascus living, 5 million, we've had for 2 years, no less than 10 rocket-propelled grenade goes on Damascus, on civilians. They've never hit an army unit. It's always civilians. For 2 years, this has been going on every single day. These people, there's no ISIS around Syria. They are the Free Syrian Army. The ones that Adam Schiff and McCain wants to arm and send more weapons to kill more civilian Syrians. Okay, yes, they're aiming at Christians and maybe Alawite, but they're also killing a lot of Sunnis. Everyone who's not with them is against them. Mostly Sunnis before even Christian. One last thing, the numbers are from the Observatory for Human Rights. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights is an opposition group. They released their numbers, about 150,000 been killed in Syria. This is the biggest lie the United States has been telling us, that Bashar Assad and his army has killed 150,000. These numbers don't lie because they're from an opposition group. They're saying about total civilian 51,000. However, from this 51,000, 24,000 were rebel forces. So they're counting the rebel forces who are carrying weapons and attacking other Syrian or other army are civilians. Even though there's 51,000. The army, pro-regime army groups, 57,000. So the Syrian army and the Syrian security forces and the one fighting with the army, 57,000. So the Syrian army is paying the biggest price. So he's not fighting olive branches. He's not fighting peaceful protesters. To kill 57,000 army men, you have to have weapons. And the biggest price is paying is the Syrian army. That's why we need to be support of it and support of Syrian government.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. So hopefully we'll see you at a later time with more information.
Thanks for having me.